Welcome to the Big Idea, Big Moves podcast. Here we talk to people who are out there really pushing the envelope in their space, people with innovative ideas, a real focus and drive, and people who are really making a difference out there. And it's a huge thrill to have Heather Monahan on our show today. Heather's a podcast host herself. She has a new show, Creating Confidence, on Podcast One. Her book, Confidence Creator, was the #1 business motivation book on Amazon in its first week. She's a TEDx speaker. She has been a guest with Tim Ferriss, Steve Harvey, and most recently interviewed Gary Vee, from what I understand. She's worked with clients like the WNBA, MGM, all the way over to kind of Royal Caribbean and Big Brothers and Big Sisters. So has really kind of worked with some high level groups, and they look to her for that experience, especially around building confidence. So welcome, Heather, and congratulations on your new podcast, I guess, to start.
No, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I think, and you tell me if I'm wrong, I think Gary Vee was your first guest, and how much of a confidence boost is that for you?
Well, it was very much strategic, right? So,
Yeah.
I know that there's a lot of podcasts out there, and in order to garner attention, you really need to go big out of the gates. Anyways, that was my strategy, and it worked. So I
Yeah.
definitely thought he'd be a fantastic first guest, and it was not easy landing him, but, I put the time, effort, and work in, and it paid off. The show did extremely well, and it got me that, that big focus I was looking for that first week.
Yeah, nothing like starting with a big bang. So we're really happy to have you here because I know in reading some of your work and listening to it, you've got some great things to add. And I think to start, I mean, you talk a lot about confidence being the starting point for living a more fulfilling and successful life. And maybe I'll ask you just to kind of talk about that and maybe how it's translated into your journey to where you are today.
Yeah, sure. So for forever, really, I was very driven in regards to pursuing a paycheck and money and getting ahead in business. And on the surface, that appeared to pay off really well. I made a lot of money in corporate America. I was constantly promoted. I made I reached the C-suite, which doesn't happen often for women. And I was a chief revenue officer in media responsible for hundreds of millions of dollars. I won a lot of awards. And on that surface level, it really looked like things were great. However, what I wasn't really aware of at the time was that I was lacking in confidence. And it actually took me getting fired 2 years ago to really hit that low moment in my life and say, hey, hang on, what's happening here? Where am I going wrong? And, where do I go from here? And the first thing I really focused on in that window of time, between tears and sitting under a weighted blanket was, hey, I don't feel really good about myself right now, and how am I going to address this? And that's really where my idea to write Confidence Creator came from. And I had led a life around sales and leadership and marketing, and suddenly I was thinking of all those things that I've been doing for years as, that's great, and I'm glad I did it, but I'm not really addressing myself first. How much better could I be if I became a stronger, more confident version of myself? Then I could go out and, do anything I wanted with sales, marketing, or leadership. But if you don't really address you and those core fundamentals first, you're not really pursuing a life that's up to the potential that you could actually have.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people hit those snags along the way, whether it's losing a job, like you were saying, or experiencing some type of failure or what they see as a failure. Looking back on your experience and maybe kind of what you've put together recently is, how do you do that? How what kind of process do you go through to make sure that you don't stay in that state and that you start to build yourself forward and build that confidence back?
Well, everyone has different issues and different situations, but one of the things that I like to challenge people first and foremost to do are to fire the villains in your life. And by that I mean oftentimes many of us are surrounded with people who are negative, trying to hold us back, trying to hold us down, putting us down. And when you have people like that in your life, it is slowly chipping away at your confidence, and you might not even be realizing it. For me, that person was the person who fired me. And when that woman was out of my life, suddenly I mean, it was literally a couple of days. I started seeing amazing, positive people start showing up in my life, and I just felt so much better about myself because that person that was always putting me down and giving me those, looks of upset and disgust, that person was gone. And I started to feel better about who I was because I wasn't being brought down by that anymore. And then suddenly that created space for really positive people to come in. And those people were cheering me on. And suddenly I could hear my inner voice saying, hey, you are doing a great job. I had been tuning out of that for so long, listening to some negative talk that was happening around me. So one of the steps I challenge people is create that list. Who are those villains in your life and take action to fire them today and now. Some
Yeah.
people may have the answer, I don't have villains in my life. The villain is in my own head. I'm constantly putting myself down. Well, if that is the case, then it's very easy to rewrite that narrative that you're running, that tape that you're running in your mind, and write down things that you wanted to say, even if you're not saying them today. I am competent. I am powerful. I am enough. I am loved. I am good. Whatever it is, and you read those to yourself 7 times a day because frequency sells,
Mhm.
frequency and messaging works. And make that commitment to yourself to do that for 1 month and see how much better you feel. Practice gratitude. That's another great way to start building confidence in yourself because you shift away from a negative way and negative pattern of thinking to starting to be truly grateful for all that you have. And more positive opportunities start coming to you when you do that, and you start feeling better about who you are and being grateful for that moment you're in the present. All these different steps that you can take, they seem very small. However, they have massive results and implications.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, Heather. I just recently spoke with Joe DeCina, who's the head of Spartan, and one of those real kind of driven people. But one of the things he said is almost the same thing, that I want to be surrounded by people who build me up, not people who tear me down. And he said he
Sure.
did went through a similar process to that, to make sure that he is always around people that are feeding kind of what that positive side of what he's doing. And it's interesting to see that how many successful people make that realization pretty early.
Absolutely. And if you haven't made it yet, today's the day and start making
Yeah.
those decisions to cut the negative ones out and watch how many great people start showing up for you.
Now, how about I mean, obviously the other side is looking at. I don't know how you feel about kind of goals lists and kind of journaling that are connected to those things. Lots of people out there are kind of big proponents of that. How does that fit into kind of what you talked about, or does it? So
Yes, yes, and yes. I'm a big
okay.
proponent of journaling. I've journaled my entire life, and I'm so thankful for that because when it came time to write my book, it was so easy for me to go into my closet, pull out journals, and use specific stories and examples that I wrote about years ago, and I could have my voice and emotion in those moments and see my growth, see the patterns, see the trends, see what I had overcome. So having that arsenal of information about myself in my own handwriting, in my own voice is such an amazing experience to go back and going through those journals helped me to realize, wow, I don't take action on something until someone tips their hand to me. Meaning I had wanted to speak at a conference for years, this technology conference in New York. And I saw for 2 years, I wrote about how I wanted to speak at that conference. However, I never pitched myself to the founder of that conference until he sent me a DM one day or a text message, I believe, saying, hey, just saw you speak. You're a really excellent speaker. Once he said that to me, I pitched myself. But I started noticing, I wonder if it's just with this example. No, it wasn't. So having that revelation, getting that self awareness allowed me to realize, you know what? No more. What if I had been going for the things I really wanted my whole life without people validating it first? How much more would I have now? How much more success? So I made a pivotal decision to start taking action to pursue the things that I wanted to pursue without other people supporting it. And that has made massive change in my life. I have felt, I'm really acting on my intuition. I'm listening to my inner voice. I wouldn't have known those things if I hadn't journaled. So to me, journal is really taking your temperature every day, watching your own progress, and getting to know yourself in a very deep fashion, which is eye opening. As far as setting goals, oh my gosh, Goals are massive in my life. I write them down. I forecast my future. I create a vision for it. I hold myself accountable. I share it on social media. I take all these necessary steps to create that future and potential in my life that I see and want for myself, but to really crystallize it and start creating it.
Well, and so how if you're one of those people that are thinking, the confidence piece is the part that I'm lacking. It worries me to go out and reach out this way. It worries me to be able to do this, or I'm not good enough to be able to do that. How do you use those kind of action plans and be intentional to be able to, I guess, build that muscle to be able to make sure that you don't kind of fall victim to that kind of imposter syndrome stuff as you go through this process.
That's going to happen, and that's fine. It happens to me too.
Yeah.
I'm taking a stage Tuesday to interview Sarah Blakely, and by far and beyond, this is, she's probably the biggest personality that she's in my mind, other than Oprah, that's out there in the U.S. right now. So of
Yeah.
course, when I accepted the opportunity, immediately I thought, oh my gosh, am I qualified to be on the same stage with her? Oh my gosh, this woman literally has sat down with Oprah. Oh my god, all these ideas came into my mind of, am I going to blow it? Should I even really be up there? Is it that you get to a point where you understand, hey, that's normal. I remember I felt like that the day I got promoted when I became chief revenue officer. I started questioning everything. And then I think back, I killed it in that job. I doubled the revenues in the company in that role. And then I used that as an indicator that I am qualified to go on that Sarah Blakely stage. If I questioned myself then, well, you know what? I was wrong. I did a great job. Then you know what? I'm going to use that as an indicator it's going to work this time too. And you start looking back in your life at these other times you question yourself, which everybody does. If you're not pushing yourself towards enough greatness. You're not taking enough risks. But every time I'm going to that next level, I question myself again, and I use that as a green light to say, all right, Heather, good job. You're really putting yourself out there this time, and this one's going to pay off too.
And that's maybe another big reason why journaling is a good way to be able to do that, because if you're always looking to that next piece, a way of almost validating that is by looking back on the successes you've had already, and having that kind of new view of it. And I think a lot of people get caught in achieving the next goal, and not celebrating enough of, yeah, I've done some great things, and I'm okay to move to the next one.
Absolutely. And part of that's with the people you surround yourself with. If you're surrounding yourself with people who are very fearful and don't want to push themselves, you'll start taking on some of that fear and start holding yourself back. Conversely, if you start surrounding yourself with people who are beyond your wildest dreams successful, you'll start seeing that potential and possibilities out there for you too.
Absolutely. Now, on the other side of things, Heather, there are some people that are probably listening that are thinking, "Yeah, it's easy for Heather. She's obviously, she's extroverted. She's somebody who's maybe naturally confident, and so
Oh my God.
getting back to that state is easier." So, I hear that, and just, but I'm sure there's lots of people asking it. So, if you're that introverted person or something like that listening to it, um, how would you answer that?
So when I was a small child, I was so afraid to leave the home or go to school that I stopped talking. And I had to be put into a special school for children that, have emotional issues, anxiety issues, and don't speak. And I share that because it's the antithesis of how people think I am today. The person that I am today wasn't because I was just dropped on the earth like this, far from it.
Yep.
There was so much fear in my life, so much insecurity, so much hiding from and shame. And I can't tell you how much I was consumed with these really awful emotions for a long time. However, I've created the person that is here today, and I've worked hard to do it. That's why sometimes I do get irritated when someone will say, well, of course you're confident. Look how easy it is for you. Let me tell you,
Yep.
heck no, it is not. And you know what? Here's the thing. I really believe that anyone who truly is confident, who's going for their greatest life possible, they're going to face failures and low moments and question themselves. To really be an authentic, vulnerable you that's going for it, it's not easy for anyone. And the people that pretend it is are the ones that are the most insecure. So it's really about figuring out who are you, getting to know yourself, and start stepping into your passion, into your purpose. the more you start showing up as that real you and doing the things that you love to do, the more you're going to feel confident, the stronger you're going to become. And I remember about 4 years ago, I was speaking at a charity event, and I had never spoken about my childhood up until that point 4 years ago. So I was
Yeah.
in my 40s, and I never wanted people to know where I came from. I didn't want people to know how I struggled. I was afraid. And that
Yeah.
day was the first time I shared how hard my childhood was and how we had been on food stamps and how I felt badly about myself and I was embarrassed and ashamed. And it ended up that day, I received more messages from people attending that luncheon, more DMs thanking me. And I realized, wow, showing up today as the real me for the first time at a speaking engagement got me the most amazing, incredible feedback. And I felt so proud of myself. It built confidence and courage within me. And I started to realize the more I actually gravitate towards being the person I really, really am in my heart of hearts, the stronger I become. And that's when things started connecting and making sense. And it didn't happen overnight. It's been a process to get me to where I am today, which is not, I still have a lot longer to go, a lot more work to do. However, it really allowed me to begin taking a corner. And I wish that same thing for everyone else. So start becoming the real you, start dressing like the real you, and watch how the people you'll say, oh, but that's going to affect this relationship or that. That's great then. Maybe those aren't your people. And maybe you're going to start attracting different people into your life. And maybe you're going to gravitate towards art or dance or working with children, whatever it is. But you're ultimately going to find your real passion and then find your superpower.
It's interesting that you talk about kind of how things have changed for you over time, and I wondered. I mean, I have a couple of daughters who, social media to them can be fantastic, and to everybody, listening, there's a really good side to that. The other side is that it can be something where we get into kind of that comparison piece where everyone's comparing against a very two-dimensional world, and what people are doing and have. And I just wonder, how would you have any advice to people that are helping, helping their children or helping kind of other people kind of get past that, where it can be a tough environment where so much is reliant on it, but at the same time, how much of it is not real, not authentic, like you were saying.
I have so much to say about this. Okay.
Yeah.
So the first thing that I would say is pick one example. I have this one woman that I know. When you look at her social feed, you think she was perfect. However,
Yeah.
I really know her and she's crazy as the day is long. And anyone who really knows her, we all have that one example. So I like to attach that one example anytime I'm looking through a feed and I say, oh, look at this amazing, oh, I wish and then I stop myself and say, Heather, think about that one girl, this could be crazy too. So I like to keep that one example in my mind because it really makes you question every single post that you see, because we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. They could be crazy, and you know what? I want no part of that life. So that helps me to reframe what I see things as keeping that one true story that I have of a complete flip on social versus the reality. Have
Yeah.
that one story. The other thing that I would recommend to people is where you put your focus is where your energy goes. So if you start, you're consuming yourself with, oh, I want to see what this girl's up to, or oh, I'm so jealous of this one and that one. You're giving those people all of your energy. You're helping them to grow. You're helping them to, pursue their dreams, and you're taking it away from you. When you realize that, you will unfollow those people, because here's the thing, best of luck to them. I hope they have a great life, but I don't need to be giving anyone else my energy and my focus. I need to be putting that on me. And I need to be putting that, towards my initiatives, my goals, and I need to be growing my efforts. And when I understood that, I stopped, obsessing about what other people were doing, and I started obsessing about what I'm doing. What action am I taking today? What memory am I creating today? What vision for my future am I going to start chasing down? And when you put that energy and attention on you, you'll start picking up momentum. And then you're going to start making progress. And then you're going to start getting excited. And then things will start clicking. So really making a decision, and I visually see it. The minute I start focusing on someone else, I say, oh, no, heck no, I'm not giving that girl my energy. I'm going to go ahead and shift right back. I'm unfollowing her. I'm putting it on me. And that's where I'm going to put my focus and energy. The other thing that I would say is there is the most important social media platform is our mind. And we own it 100%. No one else puts anything in that feed but us. So why not curate it to your advancement? Why not curate and select what you're putting in there? So sit down with a piece of paper and write down the things you want to put in there. I want to run this tape. I am kind. I am smart. I am successful. I create my future. I write down, my book is becoming a movie. I am going to be the greatest speaker in the U.S. this year. I write down every vision I have for myself and I read that to myself daily, which means I'm running that tape in my social media platform that I'm in charge of. I do it with frequency. I do it often. I put images with it. I really put media and the marketing that I learned, being in the media industry to work for me in my own mind, and everyone else can make that same decision and put it to work for them in their mind.
Yeah, it's just all so intentional. You know what? We're going to take a quick break, Heather, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. And when we do, I wanted to ask Heather a little bit about women in leadership and are we doing enough there? I know she's kind of she talked a bit about her experience, but I'm sure that's also something that she has some thoughts of moving forward. So we'll take a quick break and be right back. So, small business owners, HR people, anybody who is really putting together a business that's small to medium size, one of the things that gets held back all the time is not thinking about having to build things right. And all of those basics, the HR basics, the talent basics, they're the non flashy, non sexy things, but they need to be in place. Look at all the organizations that have grown too quickly, haven't put those things in place, and start to lose their culture, start to lose some of the things that you've worked so hard to be able to build. So that's why we have actually put something together. You don't have to have this big kind of technology solution, all of those things. You don't have to hire a whole bunch of people. What you need to be able to do is get some of those basics in place right now. And what we have is a kit we've put together for you to be able to have kind of all of those basics, about 20 different things ranging from, what does a job posting look like? What kind of process should you have in place to be able to make sure that you're bringing the right people into your culture, the employee guide so that you make sure that you solidify that culture, all of those things that, if you've read the E-Myth, that Gerber is saying, is make sure that you build those in right away. Also, performance appraisal forms, all of those kind of basics. I know that everybody's going to want to bring in the new flashy thing, but what we've done is so many of our clients have just said, look, let's just get something so that I can kind of get that jump start. And so what we've done is put something together to be able to help you quantumly past all of these things and be able to get some customizable tools in your hands right away. So if that interests you, if you want to grow and you want to be able to do it quickly, you want to be able to get to the more value add stuff instead of spending tons and tons of hours, and I'm talking hundreds of hours being able to put together a lot of these kind of basic policies, processes, and procedures, give us a shout. And so I'll tell you, you can email me directly at Jamie, Jamie, Allison, Allison, at epitome, EPITOME, HR.com. And I'll make sure that you get the information to you right away. Okay, thanks. We're back, and we're talking to Heather Monahan, and we've been talking lots about confidence, how to build that, and really mixed in some really cool topics. One of the things that she touched on earlier was just her work in the corporate world, and there where she went to a level which a lot of female leaders hadn't been to in especially in her niche at that time, and I just wondered, with everything going on, there's a lot of talk about being able to change the ratios of male to female in senior leadership roles, especially in certain industries. And what are your thoughts on, are we doing enough there? Is there something that should be done differently than what's happening right now?
I mean, here's the thing, right? Everyone talks a big game about, encouraging women. And at the end of the day, women have to want to do it too, right? You can't force someone up the ladder. They have to want to do it. And there's going to be decisions they need to make, and they're going to have to make sacrifices. For my career to get to where I was, I had to travel every single week. And that's hard when you're a mother. And it's just decisions that you make when you evaluate where you are in your career, where you want to go, and what you're willing to sacrifice. So that really is up to the woman first, right? And once she makes that decision and knowing, she's willing to put the work in and she's qualified, It's about accessing opportunities, environments, companies that are willing to support that. And there's tons of information out there that shows the more diverse and oftentimes female organizations are, the more successful they are, at the very highest levels in corporate America. So companies know that, but are they actually supporting it? Those are those are the questions that we need to look further into the actual specific companies, because it does vary in a case to case example. And I do wish in some regards that there was some outside way for, which this absolutely could be possible, outside way for some accounting firm to do an audit at all publicly traded companies to compare what men versus women are paid and ensure to write that. So we know that there is a gender pay gap there, and everyone
Yeah.
talks about closing it, but why not just make the decision that everyone's books are open to evaluate that one piece, and then they will immediately be rectified? Because if we did allow for that level of transparency, every company would fix it immediately today. So to me, that would be the most important step, which is so obvious and would be so fair to rectify that problem. And as we would take care of situations like that, women would feel stronger and more empowered and probably begin going for more in the workplace. It would just be yet again another initiative, another step to right equality in our country, equality in pay, and equality in business. And I would love to see that occur. I believe that's something that should definitely happen soon.
Yeah, and you know what? It's in organizations that are doing this well. That's pretty much what is happening. They're really targeting specific, looking at the numbers, being open and transparent, and leaders are backing it. But they're putting their money where their mouth is, and making sure things happen, because it does seem iterative. Those places that do it really well also mean that people coming into the organization have people to look to as mentors and as good examples, and they seem to kind of take on more of those roles. So I think that's a fantastic idea. I'll stray a little bit to another area as well, Heather. Is that because you've done a really great job at um, kind of branding and individual branding and branding for your podcast and for your books, and maybe just some tricks of the trade for there'll be kind of entrepreneurs and people that run businesses here. Are there any things that you can kind of throw out there, or have been really big wins for you in being able to build your brand quickly in your target market?
Sure. So 3 years ago, I launched my personal brand while I was still in corporate America, and that was a huge risk. However, it paid off, right? So
Yeah.
first and foremost, people need to invest in themselves, and regardless of what other people tell you, listen to yourself. And I knew I had a story to tell. I knew that I had something more than just my job that I wanted to share with the world. So I launched my website. I took my social media handles public, and I made a very conscious effort to launch a personal brand. I associated the hashtag boss in heels to essentially convey the message that anyone can be a boss. You don't need to look a certain way or dress a certain way. I told my personal story. I made a major investment in photography so that I could have a really beautiful site. I made a major investment in the creative work on my website. So I put a lot of money, resources, and time behind that, which is not easy, when you're working full time. But I decided that for my long term, I needed to start investing in me instead of just in the company I work for. And that was brilliant. So if you work for yourself, then essentially you are investing in yourself. But if you're working for someone else, which is fine, you need to start investing in you, because you never know what's going to happen at that company or that person that you work for. There can be leadership changes. There can be countless things that could occur. But every time you take a step forward and get that professional headshot done of you for LinkedIn, spend time writing an article for your blog, those are investments in you. And that will pay major dividends in the long game. Maybe not today. Maybe that's not going to bring your paycheck in today or make you more money today. But 3 years from now, it can make a sizable difference in your life. And it's done that for me. And believe me, plenty of people told me not to do it. And plenty of people told me to shut my personal brand down. And ultimately, that's why I got fired in the end, is the company did not think, it was appropriate, and they didn't like it, and they wanted to find ways to get me to stop doing it. But that's when you're at the wrong place. You're with the wrong company. If people don't want to support you in your growth and investing in you, it's time for you to move on. So invest in yourself today, determine what are your brand pillars, what is it that you stand for? What is that message that you want to convey to the world? And then create content around it and be consistent. For me, I really leaned into the LinkedIn platform a few years ago, and that's paying major dividends today. It wasn't years ago, right? It was just one more initiative that I had taken on, and it seemed like more work. But over the last few years, I've built a really large audience on LinkedIn, and I'm very consistent with creating content. I share the knowledge that I have. I share stories that I believe can benefit other people, and I try to do it on a very frequent level. And that's helped my podcast. So when I do launch a book or I do launch a podcast, I'm able to promote it there because I'm typically not promoting something. I'm sharing my information. Every once in a while, I'm going to come in and share my book or share a success story from my podcast. And then it's going to happen in a much more organic way. But I wouldn't have that vehicle if I hadn't invested in my personal brand, over 3 years ago now.
Yeah, and so much of it is an investment in yourself. So, your thought of doing this, whether you're working in a place or not, um, that's what people might struggle with a little bit, and just kind of seeing you as a great example that it pays off. It may not pay off right away, but like anything else, it pays off with some hard work and some time. So,
Well,
uh,
what everyone needs to realize is you've got to have a short-term game and a long-term game, and you need to understand the difference in both. Both are equally important, right? I need to pay my mortgage this month, but I also want to have a massive future where I'm looking at bigger things than just paying a mortgage within a month. And breaking those two things down and having that short-term game plan to handle your bills and handle your costs and needs for now may look one way and that long-term game is going to look very, very different. So figuring out what are the steps to take to build the long-term and what are the steps to take to build that short-term and having a plan for both and constantly working on both.
That's great. That's great. This has been fantastic, Heather. We've kind of looked at strong, kind of purposeful ways of building confidence and ultimately building success with some of these strategies you've talked about. If listeners were to go out and do kind of two things, literally, as soon as possible after they listen to this, to kind of build that foundation for a more fulfilling life, what might they be? What are some of those really strong and quick win things that you think they should do?
Well, I'll tell you, I just read an article about Gronkowski being the Patriots and retiring at
Yeah.
such a young age, and he got into detail. And what I took from the article was this: he basically decided he wasn't feeling his best. He needed to put himself first, and that's why he needed to retire and leave the NFL. And to me, what I thought is, if Rob Gronkowski can retire from the NFL and leave the Patriots to put himself and his needs first, I think that I can too, and I think you can too. So whatever that looks like for you, if it means getting a sitter so you can start going to the gym, then do it. If it means taking a class at night because you want to start exploring something new and you didn't want to put funds towards it because you might feel guilty, do it. Start putting you first because taking that next step and making that decision is going to create massive confidence in yourself and change your future, your tomorrow. So I really liked that article and that example of what he had done to put himself first. And it just reminds me we all need to do that. Another thing that I do is, in any moment, you can go into a situation feeling strong and things can change in that moment, right? So maybe you're pitching yourself for a promotion and you're getting nervous. One of the things that I do is I always write messages on the bottom of my shoes. And I do that so when I'm in a situation and I start to get nervous or scared or doubt myself, I look down to see what I wrote earlier that morning when I was feeling really confident and good about myself. And usually I write down, I can, I will. And it just gives me that sense of strength that I've been here before. I've doubted myself before. I didn't die. I got through it. And most times I get through it in a really amazing way. So I can and I will again right now. And it gives me that pick me up to really refocus, get that clarity, and get that confidence back when I'm feeling low.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, thank you very much, Heather, and again, thanks for sharing your advice and your expertise. It's been fantastic. Thanks for listening, everybody. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast. You'll hear some more great people like Heather here, and then also be sure to check out Heather's podcast. It's Creating Confidence from Podcast One. Absolutely go on there. You're going to hear lots of great guests and lots more of that snippet you've heard today. Like us on social media, both of us, that would be awesome. And we'll see you again next time on Big Idea, Big Moves.